Hey guys, tonight we are journeying back, way back to a time before the gleaming palaces of Seoul, before the global phenomenon of K-pop, and even before the invention of kimchi as you know it. We're heading to the ancient Korean peninsula, a land of misty mountains and deep dark forests, teeming with tigers. It's a place that history often paints with a broad romantic brush tales of divine emperors, born from bears of noble warrior scholars and of kingdoms rising from the sacred soil. But tonight we're going to peel back that glossy veneer. We're going to look at the terrible, uncomfortable, and frankly quite gritty truths of life in the earliest Korean dynasties. This isn't the story you see in historical dramas with their perfect hairstyles and dramatic slow-motion sword fights. This is a world of dirt, smoke, and superstition. A world of constant gnawing hunger and the ever-present threat of violence. Let's be honest, if you were dropped into this period with your modern sensibilities and your reliance on things like, antibiotics and not being sacrificed to ensure a good harvest, you probably wouldn't last a week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a small thing, but it lets me know we're on the right track together. And as always, I love to see where you're all tuning in from. Drop your city and local time in the comments below. It's amazing to see this community span the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the ground beneath you. It's not pavement, not floorboards. It's damp earth packed down by generations of footsteps. The air you breathe is thick with the smell of wood smoke, wet leaves, and something else. Something wild and musky. You are standing at the edge of a dense primeval forest on the Korean peninsula thousands of years ago. The trees are giants, their leaves forming a canopy so thick that the sunlight dapples the forest floor in shifting, uncertain patterns. This is a land of spirits. You know this because your elders have told you. Every gnarled tree, every strange rock formation, every rushing stream has a spirit living within it. And you must be careful not to offend them. You've grown up with the stories whispered around the central fire pit of your village on long, cold nights. The greatest story of all, the one that gives your people a sense of place in this vast, intimidating world, is the story of Dangun. You can almost hear the old shaman's raspy voice now telling of a time when Hwanung, the son of the Lord of Heaven, descended to earth. He came down to a sacred sandalwood tree atop a great mountain to govern humanity. And it was there in that ancient time that a tiger and a bear came to him, pleading to be made human. Hwanung gave them a challenge. He handed them a bundle of sacred mugwort and 20 cloves of garlic, and instructed them to stay in a dark cave for 100 days, eating only this divine food. The tiger, impatient and fierce, gave up within a few days and bounded back out into the wilderness. But the bear endured. She stayed in the darkness, her faith unwavering. After just 21 days, her fur fell away, her paws softened, and she was transformed into a beautiful woman. This woman, Ungnyo the bear woman, prayed for a child. Hwanung, moved by her devotion, took her as his wife, and from their union a son was born. His name was Dangun Wangjum, the Sandalwood King. He would establish the first kingdom, Asadal, its capital, near the modern-day city of Pyongyang. This was the birth of your people, the beginning of a lineage that flowed from heaven itself. It's a beautiful story. It gives you comfort. It makes you feel as though you are part of something grand, something divine. But now open your eyes. The story fades like morning mist. You are not a demigod. You are not the child of a celestial prince and a bear woman. The reality of your life is etched into the dirt under your fingernails and the persistent ache in your back. You live in a cluster of semi-subterranean pit houses, dug into the earth for warmth, and topped with a simple thatched roof of reeds and straw. A hole in the center of the roof lets out the smoke from the fire that is your only source of heat and light. The air inside is always smoky, stinging your eyes. It smells of unwashed bodies, drying fish, and the damp earth that makes up your walls and floor. You look out across the landscape and you don't see the divine grace of Dangun's kingdom. You see something else. Dotted across the hills, standing like silent, brooding giants, are the dolmens. Massive stone tombs. They are a common sight, these megaliths so common that you barely think about them. But today you do. You see one a northern-style table tomb with two massive standing stones supporting a capstone that must weigh dozens of tons. You know who is buried there. A chieftain. A powerful man from a powerful clan. And you remember the day they raised it. You remember the entire village being called out, men, women, and older children, to haul on thick, crude ropes made of woven vines. You remember the sound of hundreds of people groaning, straining their bare feet, slipping in the mud as they dragged the colossal stone slab up an earthen ramp. You remember the overseer's men with bronze daggers at their hips, shouting their voices raw. A rope snapped, and the man next to you was crushed, his life extinguished in an instant to build a house for a dead man. His family mourned for a day, and then they had to go back to work. There was no divine protection for him, and there is none for you. Your family members, when they die, will be buried in a simple jar or a shallow pit, marked only by a small mound of earth that will wash away in a few seasons. These dolmens, these permanent, unmovable monuments, are not for you. They are the first and most terrible truth of your world. Some people are worth more than others, even in death. Your life is governed by a relentless cycle of seasons and scarcity. In the spring, you plant millet and sorghum your back, bent for hours under the sun, using a simple wooden stick to break the hard soil. You hunt, you fish, but the forest is dangerous and the rivers don't always provide. In the summer, you tend to the meager crops, praying you won't have a drought or a flood. In the autumn, you harvest, and a great sense of anxiety settles over the village. Will it be enough? Will the harvest last through the long, brutal winter? Because you know what the winter means. It means huddling in your pit house, rationing every handful of grain, feeling the gnawing emptiness in your stomach become a constant companion. It means sickness. A simple cough can turn into a rattling fever that steals the life from a child. There are no heavenly princes to save you. There is only the shaman with her chants and herbs, which sometimes work and sometimes do not. Your small village is not alone, but that isn't always a comfort. You are part of a larger tribe, one of dozens scattered across the southern part of the peninsula in a loose confederation the traders from the east call the Samhan or the Three Han. To the north, in the vast plains of Manchuria, are other powerful confederacies like Buyeo and Goguryeo. This is not a unified nation. It is a patchwork of rivals. Power is everything. A stronger tribe can demand tribute from a weaker one. Every year after the harvest, a delegation arrives from the dominant clan in the region. They don't ask. They inspect your granaries and take a large portion of what you have worked so hard to grow. They take your woven hemp cloth. They inspect the young women, and sometimes they take one of them too to be a wife or a servant for their chieftain. You watch your fists clenched, a fire of helpless rage burning in your gut. But you do nothing, because you know the alternative is a raid. It is men with bronze and iron spears storming your village at dawn. It is the screams and the flames and the end of everything. So you bow your head and hand over the fruits of your labor. Up north in the kingdom of Buyeo, the customs are even more terrifying. You hear stories from traders' tales that make your blood run cold. They say that when a Buyeo king dies, he does not travel to the afterlife alone. His favorite servants, his courtiers, sometimes as many as 100 people, are killed and buried with him. They call it following the king in death. Imagine being a servant in the Buyeo court. You serve your king faithfully, you bring him his food, you attend to his needs. But as he grows old and frail, as his cough deepens, you don't feel pity. You feel a cold, creeping dread. Every day you pray for his health, not out of loyalty, but out of sheer terror. His last breath will also be yours. You will be led to his massive tomb, perhaps given a cup of poison, or perhaps simply met with the blunt force of a club. Your life is an appendage to his. This is the ultimate expression of the power you see in the dolmens. Your entire existence can be sacrificed for the comfort of a powerful man in the next world. It's a level of social hierarchy that is absolute and horrifying. You try to find moments of levity. You joke with your friends as you repair a fishing net, maybe making fun of a neighboring village's strange rituals. You might laugh about how the latest fashion for a real man of status is a full bearskin cloak. It looks impressive, sure, but after a week of foraging in the rain, you can smell him coming from a mile away. These small moments are what keep the darkness at bay. But the darkness is always there, waiting at the edges. Then things begin to change. A new power is solidifying in the north. It is more organized than the tribal confederations. It has a king, a court, and a walled capital. It is called Gojoseon. For generations, it has been the dominant force, the kingdom of the mythic Dongun. But the Dangun story is old now. The new kings are just men, and they rule by the sword, not by divine right. They have begun to master iron. Iron plows mean you can cultivate more land, which means more food and larger populations. But iron spearheads and iron swords mean warfare is becoming far more efficient and deadly. One day, news arrives from the north. It spreads from trader to trader, from village to village, carried on the wind. A man named Waman, a general from the Yan state in what is now northern China, has fled to Gojoseon with 1,000 of his followers. He pledges his loyalty to your king, King Jun. Weeman offers to serve as a vassal to guard the western frontier against other threats from the mainland. King Jun, seeing a skilled warrior with a loyal retinue, agrees. He grants Wyman command of the border and showers him with gifts. You are a simple farmer, or maybe a low-ranking soldier in the Gojoseon army. You see these newcomers, these Yan refugees. They speak a different tongue. They fight in a different style. They are disciplined and their eyes are hard. You feel a prickle of unease. Giving an armed outsider control of your border seems unwise. Your instincts scream that this is a mistake. Historians in the far future will debate this moment. They will argue whether Weeman was a desperate refugee seeking a new home, a cunning invader planning this all along, or simply a brilliant opportunist who saw a chance and took it. But you don't have the luxury of academic debate. You are living it, and your gut is right. Weeman uses his position to consolidate his power, winning over the local tribes and building his military strength. Then he sends a message to King Jun, claiming that the mighty Han dynasty of China is about to invade with a massive army, and he must return to the capital to defend the king. It is a lie. As Weeman's rescuing army approaches the capital, Wangam Seong King Jun finally understands the depth of the betrayal. Weeman's forces storm the city. King Jun, the latest in a long line of Gojoseon rulers, is forced to flee by boat to the south, a king without a kingdom. Weeman takes the throne. The divine lineage of Dangun, if it ever truly existed, is broken. A foreigner, a refugee turned warlord, is now your king. The lesson is sharp, and brutal power flows not from heavenly blood, but from the blade of a sword. The court is now a place of whispers and shifting allegiances. It's like trying to navigate a forest full of poisonous mushrooms. One wrong choice, one misplaced word of trust, and your entire family could be wiped out in a political purge. For a time, Joseon prospers. It acts as a middleman controlling the profitable trade between the Chinese Han dynasty and the tribes of the peninsula. Your new kingdom grows wealthy and powerful. It conquers smaller neighboring tribes. You might be conscripted into this new, more aggressive army. Your military training is rudimentary, probably consisting of two main lessons. One, this is the sharp end pointed at the enemy. Two, try not to die. You fight against other tribal peoples who look just like you, speak a similar tongue, and are probably just as terrified as you are. You do this for a king whose grandfather was a stranger to this land, but this prosperity comes at a cost. The Han dynasty under the ambitious Emperor Wu does not like a powerful independent state on its border controlling its trade routes. Tensions escalate. A Han envoy is assassinated, and that is the final straw. The full terrifying might of one of the world's greatest empires turns its gaze upon your kingdom. Emperor Wu dispatches a massive army and a powerful fleet. Your world is about to be set on fire. You are a soldier standing on the earthen walls of a fortress on the Yalu River. You watch the Han army approach. It is like a river of men and steel stretching to the horizon. They have gleaming armor, vast columns of supplies, and terrifying siege weapons you've never seen before. Massive crossbows that can punch through a wooden shield. Catapults that can hurl giant stones and smash your walls. Your bronze-tipped spear suddenly feels like a child's toy. The war drags on for over a year. At first, the Gojoseon army puts up a fierce resistance. You win a few early victories driven by desperation and knowledge of the terrain. A surge of pride flows through you. Maybe you can hold them off, but the Han are relentless. They have near limitless resources and manpower. For every soldier you killed, two more seem to take his place. The real poison, however, is not outside the walls but within. The Gojo Seon court begins to fracture under the immense pressure. Paranoia takes root. The king Ugeo, grandson of Weeman, suspects his ministers of treason. The ministers, fearing for their lives and seeing the hopelessness of the situation, begin to plot against him. It's a spiral of fear and betrayal. You hear rumors that one high-ranking minister has surrendered to the Han. Another tries to assassinate the king and fails, forcing him to flee. Finally, a group of ministers conspires and assassinates King Ugeo. They surrender the capital city Wangam-seong to the Han forces, hoping for favorable treatment. But even then, the fighting doesn't stop completely. A few loyalist officials fight on, but the cause is lost. The kingdom has rotted from the inside out. Your nation is gone. Not in a blaze of glory, but in a pathetic whimper of backstabbing and surrender. You survive the war. You walk through the smoking ruins of your capital. Han officials are now in charge. They divide your former kingdom into 4 administrative provinces, the 4 commanderies of Han. You are now a conquered subject. You are forced to labor for foreign masters to pay taxes to a faraway emperor. The myths of divine bears, the pride of your warrior kings, the wealth of your trading ports, it has all turned to ash. You are back where you started, cold, hungry, and powerless. But now you don't even have a king to call your own. You are adrift of people without a state, living in the shadow of a terrible truth: everything can be lost. And your long, difficult journey is only just beginning. The world did not end with the fall of your kingdom. It was simply handed over to new management. You now live in the shadow of the eagle, the symbol of the distant but ever-present Han dynasty. Your life is measured by the decrees of a governor. You've never seen a man sent from a foreign land to rule over you. You see the Han administrators in the market town, their silk robes and intricate hairstyles, a stark contrast to your own simple hemp clothing. They bring with them their written language, a complex tapestry of characters you cannot decipher. They build roads and establish new administrative centers, and their law is absolute, backed by the cold, efficient steel of their garrisons. To live under occupation is to live a half-life. You are a ghost in the land of your ancestors. You pay your taxes, you obey the new laws, and you keep your head down. The rage and grief from the conquest have cooled into a dull, permanent resentment, a stone in the pit of your stomach. But in the deep forests and rugged mountains, something is stirring. Small bands of displaced people, former Gojoshin soldiers, and defiant farmers are coming together. They live as bandits and rebels, striking at Han patrols when they can, melting back into the wilderness before the legions can respond. They are a nuisance, nothing more to the mighty Han. But to you, they are a flicker of hope. They are the proof that the spirit of this land has not been entirely extinguished. Decades pass. The grip of the Han commanderies loosens in some places and tightens in others. The empire has its own problems, rebellions and intrigues thousands of miles away that cause ripples even here on the very eastern edge of their world. In this chaotic power vacuum, new leaders, new warlords begin to claw their way to prominence. This isn't the glorious preordained rising of new nations you will hear about in the epics sung by future poets. It is a messy, violent birth, like 3 monstrous creatures hatching from the same blighted egg, each one immediately trying to devour the others. To the north, in the formidable mountains and harsh plains of former Gojoseon territory, the people of Goguryeo rise. They are a warrior people born from the saddle. They claim to be the true successors of Gojoseon, and their ambition is boundless. From the moment of their founding, their history is one of war and conquest. You might be a farmer living in a village on the border of their influence. You watch their cavalry, renowned for their skill and ferocity, thundering across the plains. They are your protectors and your predators. They defend the frontier against other threats, but they also demand your sons for their army and your grain for their horses. Life in Goguryeo is hard, cold, and disciplined. It is a kingdom forged in a crucible of perpetual conflict. To the southwest, in the fertile plains around the Han River, another power emerges, Baekje. Legend says its founders were sons of the founder of Goguryeo, who fled south after a succession dispute. Whether or not that's true, Baekje quickly becomes a different kind of kingdom. They are sophisticated masters of the sea. Their ships trade with the coastal states of China and the mysterious Wa people across the sea in what will one day be called Japan. They are artists and scholars. They adopt Buddhism and build exquisite temples and pagodas. But do not be fooled by their elegance. Their diplomacy is backed by a sharp sword, and their mercantile ambition is just as ruthless as Goguryeu's thirst for land. If you are a fisherman living on the coast, you might find your boat, your entire livelihood conscripted into the Baekje Navy for a campaign against a rival port. Your life is secondary to the state's commercial and military ambitions. And then there is your home. In the southeastern corner of the peninsula, shielded by a forbidding mountain range, lies the small, seemingly insignificant kingdom of Silla. For a long time, you are the underdog, the country bumpkin of the three. Your territory is smaller, your resources scarcer, your culture less developed than the worldly Baekje or the mighty Goguryeo. You live with a constant sense of being hemmed in. Your kings pay tribute, they make humiliating alliances, and they are constantly fending off raids from your larger, more aggressive neighbors. The establishment of these three rival states marks the true beginning of what future historians will call the Three Kingdoms period. For the next several centuries, this land will know no peace. The entire peninsula will become a chessboard for three vengeful kings, and you are one of the pawns. You are born in a small Silla village, a few dozen pit houses clustered in a valley. Your father was a farmer. His father before him was a farmer. You assume you will be a farmer too, but the world has other plans. The constant pressure from Baekje to the west and Goguryeo to the north means Silla needs every able-bodied man it can get. At the age of 16, a royal official arrives in your village. He reads from a wooden tablet, and your name is on the list. You are now a soldier. You are given a simple spear with an iron tip, a small rectangular shield of wood and leather, and a coarse hemp tunic. Your training is brief and brutal. You learn how to stand in a line, how to thrust with your spear, and how to ignore the screams of dying men. You learn how to march for days on nothing but a handful of dried roasted grain and a swallow of water. The most important lesson is not one of skill, but of mindset. You must kill the man in front of you before he kills you. Life settles into a grim rhythm. You are a farmer soldier. In the planting and harvesting seasons, you are allowed to return to your village, your hands calloused from the plow. But your eyes are always scanning the horizon. You can be called away at any moment. When the autumn leaves begin to turn, the fighting season begins in earnest. The harvest is in, and the kings are free to move their armies. Every year you are marched to some miserable contested border fortress, a place of damp earthworks and splintered wooden palisades. You spend your nights shivering on watch, listening to the wind, wondering if this is the night the Baekje army will attack. You joke with the other men to keep the fear at bay. The humor is dark, the only kind that makes sense here. What's the difference between a Baekje fortress and a Goguryeo fortress? One man asks. You reply, the accent of the men yelling insults at you before they try to kill you. Everyone laughs, a short, sharp bark that holds no real joy. Then the attack comes. It's not a glorious sweeping charge like in the stories. It's a chaotic, muddy, terrifying scrum. The air fills with the sound of war horns, the pounding of drums, and 1,000 men screaming. You are in the shield wall, shoulder to shoulder with men you've known your whole life. You can smell their sweat and fear. The enemy crashes against your line. A spear thrusts over the shield next to you, and the man goes down with a wet gurgle. You jab your own spear forward, feeling a sickening jolt as it finds a home in someone's gut. You don't see a face, just a body that falls away. You survive. But the boy from the next village over the one who was bragging about his sweetheart the night before lies staring at the sky with empty eyes. You feel nothing. To feel anything is a luxury you cannot afford. Silla is weak, and its kings know it. They cannot win a conventional war against the vast armies of Goguryeo or the wealth of Baekje. So they innovate. They create something new, something that is both beautiful and terrifying. They create the Hwarang. You first see them as a young soldier. They are a group of young men, sons of high-ranking aristocrats who march into your camp. They are striking. They wear fine, colorful clothes, and to your astonishment, some of them even wear makeup their faces lightly powdered. They are beautiful, almost otherworldly. These are the flower youths, but then you see them train and you realize your mistake. They are not soft. They are a state-sponsored death cult. Their training is relentless, combining scholarship, spiritual discipline, and the deadliest of martial arts. They are taught to live by a strict code of 5 commandments, the Sesek Ogai given to them by a Buddhist monk. Among them are commands to be loyal to the king and to show courage in the face of the enemy. But the one that defines them, the one that chills your blood, is Imjon Muto, never retreat in battle. For you, a common conscript of survival sometimes means a tactical retreat, living to fight another day. For the Huarang, there is no retreat. There is only victory or a glorious death. Future historians will debate their exact function. Were they a religious order, an elite military unit, or simply an aristocratic youth group? You don't know or care. You just see them chanting before a battle, their faces serene, their eyes alight with a fervent fire. They seem to welcome the prospect of dying. And as a regular soldier, you know that when you are commanded to follow these beautiful, death-seeking boys into the fray, your own chances of survival drop precipitously. They are Scylla's secret weapon, a scalpel of fanaticism designed to carve out victories where a blunt axe would fail. The world of the 3 kingdoms is a tangled web of treachery. Alliances are made and broken in the blink of an eye. One year, your king arranges a royal marriage with the Baekje court, and you are told that your western neighbors are now your blood brothers. You are marched north to fight alongside Baekje soldiers against the Goguryeo menace. You eye your new allies with suspicion. These are the same men who burned your village a decade ago. How can you trust them at your back? You quip to a friend, "Last year we were told the Baekje were monsters who ate children. This year there are honorable allies. I just hope someone gives us the new script before the battle starts." Your cynicism is well-founded. A few years later, the alliance shatters. Your king betrays Baekje to seize control of the entire Han River Valley, a strategic territory that Scylla has coveted for a century. Now, Baekje is your bitterest enemy, sworn to vengeance. The war becomes even more brutal, more personal. The fighting is not just between kingdoms anymore, it is between outside powers too. The various dynasties in China play the 3 kingdoms against each other, offering military aid to one in order to weaken another. The Wa Federation from Japan sometimes sends forces to aid their Baekje allies. The conflict becomes a vortex sucking in everyone around it. You might find yourself facing not just a Baekje spearman, but a hulking Goguryeo warrior, a Chinese crossbowman, or a fierce Wa sailor, all on the same bloody peninsula. You manage to survive into middle age, a rarity for a soldier. A Baekje arrow has left you with a permanent limp, and you are finally deemed unfit for the front lines. You return to your village, a place you barely recognize. So many faces are gone. You are now an elder. But peace is not your reward. You now face the civilian's burden, which is in some ways even more grueling than a soldier's. You are left to run the farm with the women, the children, and the other broken men. But the demands of the state are relentless. The war effort requires a constant supply of food and materials. The royal tax collector still comes, his face impassive as he measures out a huge portion of your meager harvest. A local aristocrat whose family was granted your valley for their service to the crown demands his own share on top of that. You are left with barely enough to survive the winter, and the fear never leaves. With all the able-bodied men away on campaign, your village is a tempting target for a Baekje raiding party. You sleep with a sharpened bamboo spear by your side, and every snapping twig in the night sends a jolt of panic through you. One day, another royal decree arrives. The king has conquered a fortress deep in what was once Baekje territory. It is a strategic victory, but the land is hostile, and the local population is resentful. To secure the new territory, your king has a simple, brutal solution: forced relocation. Your entire village is ordered to pack up what little you own and move. You must leave the land where you were born, the land where your parents and grandparents are buried. You are marched for weeks to this new, desolate border post. Your new home is a hastily built hut in the shadow of a military fortress. Your purpose is simple: you are a human shield. Your presence, your farms, your families, You are the buffer, the first line of defense that will absorb the inevitable Baekje counterattack. You are a piece on the board moved from one square to another at the whim of a distant king. You stand on a hill overlooking your new unfamiliar valley. You are old now. Your body aches with the memory of old wounds and a lifetime of labor. You have seen kings rise and fall. You have seen alliances form and crumble like dried mud. You have survived. But for what down in the village you see a royal official talking to a group of young boys. Among them is your eldest grandson. His eyes are wide, filled with a mixture of fear and the same foolish, youthful excitement you once had. The official hands him a wooden tag with his name on it. He has been conscripted. The king has a new campaign planned. The leaves on the trees are turning red and gold, the color of blood and bruises. The war drums are beating again. It is a sound that has been the backdrop to your entire life. Nothing has changed. Nothing will ever change. The endless war grinds on, and it has come for your grandson just as it came for you. You watch your grandson disappear down the dusty track, his small shoulders squared, with a sense of duty you know all too well. He is marching off to fight for Silla, to defend its borders and uphold the honor of its king. There is a part of you, the old soldier, that feels a swell of pride, but it is quickly drowned by a deeper, colder knowledge. You know that the spear in his hand and the enemy in front of him are not the most powerful forces that will shape his life. His fate was sealed the moment he was born, sealed by an invisible architecture as rigid and inescapable as the mountains that surround your kingdom. It is the law of the bones. You've tried to explain it to him, but it's like trying to describe the wind. It is everywhere and nowhere. It is the very air you breathe, the silent organizing principle of your entire world. It is the Galpum, the bone rank system. It is an immense, unchangeable pyramid, and you were born at its very bottom. You tell him that his bones, the very marrow within them, carry a rank, a quality that dictates everything he will ever be. It is not something he has earned or failed to earn, it simply is. It is the most terrible and enduring truth of being born in Silla. You are not a person, you are a rank. At the very pinnacle of this pyramid, so high you can barely imagine them, are the Seonggol, the sacred bone. These are not mere mortals. They are considered living deities, the only people on earth with blood pure enough to sit on the throne. Their lineage is traced directly back to the mythical first king Bak Hyeokyeos, who was said to have hatched from a golden egg. To maintain this sacred purity, they must marry only other sacred bones. An uncle might marry his niece, or first cousins might be wed, their bloodline turned inward to preserve its sanctity. From your hovel, they are as distant and abstract as the stars. They are the object of your compulsory worship, but not your understanding. They live in the capital Sorabiol. In palaces you will never see their lives, a cycle of ritual and divine responsibility, completely detached from your world of mud and toil. Just below them, yet still impossibly far above you, are the Jingol, the true bone. These are the powerful aristocratic clans who are related to the royal line, but whose blood is not perfectly pure. They cannot be king, but they control everything else. They are the high ministers in the council of nobles, the generals who command the armies, the governors of the provinces. They own vast tracts of land that you and your family work, but will never own. When you journey to the capital to trade your meager surplus, you see them. They ride on magnificent horses with saddles decorated in gold and jade. They are draped in vibrant silks of purple and red colors you are legally forbidden from wearing. Their faces are calm and arrogant, secure in the knowledge that the world was built to serve them. They are the ones who send your grandson to war, and they are the ones who will reap the glory from his sacrifice. Below the true bone is a complex ladder of lesser aristocrats and administrators, known as the dupum, or head ranks. This is where the quiet desperation of Silla society truly festers. You know a man in the capital, a distant cousin of your wife, who is head rank 6. He is a scholar of formidable intellect. He can recite the Chinese classics from memory, and is a brilliant administrator known for his efficiency and fairness. Yet he will never rise above his current position as a mid-level functionary in the Ministry of War. The head of the ministry, a true bone lord who, you know, is famous mostly for his drunken escapades and incompetence in battle, holds his position simply because of his blood. Your cousin does his duty, he bows to his superiors, but sometimes when he thinks no one is looking, you see the flicker of bitter resentment in his eyes. He is a brilliant man trapped in a cage of mediocrity by an accident of birth. He and thousands like him are the engine of the state, yet they are forbidden from ever holding the reins. Below him are head ranks 5 and 4 men who can hold even lesser posts, their ambition capped at an even lower ceiling. And then there are head ranks 3, 2, and 1. This is you. Your rank is so low that it is barely a rank at all. You are simply a commoner, the bedrock. You are the farmer who grows the rice, the soldier who fills the ranks, the laborer who builds the palaces. You are the broad, anonymous base upon which the entire glittering, top-heavy pyramid rests. This system is not just a matter of social standing. It is a set of ruthlessly enforced laws that micromanage every detail of your existence. Think of your home. It is a simple pit house with a thatched roof. That is not just because you are poor, it is because the law dictates it. As a commoner, you are forbidden from building a house beyond a certain size. You cannot have stone walls, a raised foundation, or a tiled roof, no matter how much money you might somehow acquire. You look up at the sprawling estate of the local true-bone landowner, with its sturdy stone walls and elegant, upturned gray tiles that gleam in the sun, and you feel a sharp pang of envy. His home is not just bigger, it is a statement of his inherent superiority enshrined in law. Your clothing is another constant reminder of your place. You wear coarse undyed hemp, usually a drab brownish gray. You are legally barred from wearing silk. Bright colors like red and purple are reserved for the highest ranks. Even the design of your hat and the material of your belt are regulated. You sometimes joke with your neighbors, a grim sort of humor that is the only kind you have. Well, at least we never have to worry about what to wear to a festival. It's the same old beige tunic, same as last year, same as next year. The joke is thin, and it doesn't cover the humiliation of being perpetually marked as inferior. Every aspect of life is a reflection of the bone rank. A true bone lord can own a stable of dozens of horses. A head rank 6 official might be permitted 5. You are lucky if you own an ox or a donkey. A true bone can have a carriage decorated with precious metals. A head rank 5 is allowed a simpler carriage with specific limitations on its ornamentation. It is a society of suffocating regulations, all designed to make the hierarchy visible, inescapable, and permanent. This is the path that awaits your grandson. As a commoner, he can be a brave foot soldier. If he shows exceptional courage and survives long enough, he might be promoted to lead a small squad of 10 men. Perhaps in a 1 in a million chance, he could become a junior officer in charge of 100. But that is his ceiling. He will never command a battalion. He will never be a general. Those positions are not earned on the battlefield. They are inherited at birth. The true bone general leading the army might be a fool who has never seen a real battle, but he is in command because of his bones. Your grandson will live or die by the orders of men who see him as nothing more than an expendable resource. And perhaps the cruelest regulation of all is the one governing marriage. You must marry within your rank. A sacred bone marries a sacred bone. A true bone marries a true bone. For a true bone man to marry a head. Rank 6 woman would be a catastrophic scandal, and their children would be demoted in rank forever tainted by the mother's inferior blood. For you, it means your world is incredibly small. You married a woman from a nearby village. Your son married a woman from a village a little further down the river. Your grandson will do the same. Love, attraction, connection, all are secondary to the preservation of the rank. Your bloodline is destined to flow forever in the same narrow, muddy channel. The state's history books like the Samguk Sagi will one day lay out these laws in stark detail, confirming for future generations that this wasn't just custom. It was the rigid, unyielding legal framework of your life. This suffocating system creates a society simmering with frustration. Imagine again your cousin, the brilliant head rank 6 scholar. Let's call him Choa. He spends his days drafting logistical plans for the army, ensuring supplies reach the front. He understands the terrain, the seasonal challenges, the weaknesses in the enemy's defenses better than anyone. He proposes a brilliant flanking maneuver to his true bone general. The general, a man who sees war as a glorious game of honor, dismisses it as cowardly. He orders a frontal assault. The assault fails, and hundreds of men like your grandson die needlessly. Chu can do nothing but bow his head and say, "Yes, my lord." You see him later in the dim light of a tavern, and the mask of deference is gone. His face is a canvas of rage and impotence. He knows he could lead Scylla to victory, but he is barred by the single stupid fact of his ancestry. He looks at the deep purple robes of a high minister, walking by a color reserved for the highest true bone echelons, and his eyes are filled with a toxic mixture of longing and hatred. That splash of color is the symbol of everything he has denied, the proof that in Scylla talent is worthless when weighed against bone. For generations, this rigid system, for all its cruelty, has been stable. But a strange crisis begins to brew at the very top. The sacred bone rank in its obsessive quest for purity has become a biological dead end. Generations of inbreeding have taken their toll. There are fewer and fewer children, and eventually the unthinkable happens. The sacred bone line runs out of male heirs. The king dies, and there is no sacred bone man to succeed him. The capital is thrown into a quiet panic. According to tradition, the throne should pass to a top-ranking true bone lord. But which one? The true bone clans are all rivals, each jealously guarding their own power. If one of them becomes king, he will surely elevate his own clan and suppress the others, shattering the delicate balance of power. It could lead to civil war. So they are faced with a dilemma. Do they break the most sacred rule and allow a true bone to be king? Or do they find another way? There is another way. The late king had a daughter, a sacred bone woman. Can a woman rule? Can she bear the title of king? Can she be the son of heaven's chosen? Future historians will debate this moment endlessly. Was the acceptance of a queen a sign of some lingering matriarchal tradition from Scylla's ancient past? Or was it simply a desperate, pragmatic political move by the true bone aristocrats to preserve their own collective power by placing a woman on the throne as a figurehead, preventing any one of them from gaining ultimate authority? You sitting in your village hear the news with stunned disbelief. A woman will now be called king. It seems to defy the natural order of the heavens. In the capital, the true bone lords grudgingly accept it as the lesser of two evils. You overhear two of them arguing in the market. One complains about the absurdity of a female ruler. The other snaps back, "Perhaps, but I'd rather be ruled by a capable sacred bone woman than by that arrogant, incompetent fool from your clan." And so Queen Seondeok ascends the throne. She proves to be a shrewd and effective ruler, a great patron of Buddhism, and a clever diplomat. But her reign and the reigns of the two queens who will follow her represent a hairline crack in the monolithic structure of the bone rank system. It is a sign that even the most rigid traditions must bend to necessity. For you, however, life remains unchanged. A new face is on the throne, but the local true bone lord still owns your land. The tax collector still takes his share. Your grandson is still fighting on a distant border. You attend a village festival, and a traveling shaman offers to read your grandson's fortune. You pay her with a handful of grain. She closes her eyes and chants, then tells you, "I see a great future for your grandson. He will be a farmer, a very old and healthy farmer." She shrugs as if to say it's the best one can hope for. The bones do not lie. It is meant to be a comfort, but it feels like a curse. You look out at the fields, the same fields your father and grandfather worked. The war with Baekje and Goguryeo is a fire that rages on the horizon. It is a terrible, obvious danger. But you know now that the greater, more insidious enemy is the one within. It is the bone rank system, a quiet poison that has seeped into the soul of your kingdom. It ensures stability, but it is the cold, dead stability of a graveyard. Everyone has their place and no one can leave it. You think of your grandson fighting bravely for a kingdom that has already judged him, categorized him, and locked him into a life of insignificance. The greatest wall he faces is not a Baekje fortress. It is the one built inside his own bones. The years have worn you down, bent your back, and etched the history of your kingdom onto your face in a map of wrinkles. Your grandson is a man now, a veteran hardened by the relentless grind of the border wars. The endless cyclical conflict with Baekje and Goguryeo has become the defining reality of Silla, a bloody status quo that seems as permanent as the mountains themselves. But a new wind is blowing from the capital, a whisper of a plan so audacious, so dangerous that it feels like madness. Silla is losing. Baekje, under its bold and aggressive king Uija, has pushed deep into your territory, capturing fortress after fortress. Goguryeo remains a northern giant, an unmovable object of dread. Your kingdom is being squeezed, slowly suffocated. The kings of Silla have finally realized that they cannot win this war. Not alone. The story filters down to you in bits and pieces carried by traveling merchants and royal couriers. It centers on one man, a true-bone diplomat named Kim Chanchu, a man of incredible ambition and steely resolve. He is a master of the long game. First they say he traveled north to Goguryeo, bowing before the court of his sworn enemy to beg for an alliance against Baekje. The leader of Goguryeo, a powerful general named Yeon Gaesomun, sneered at the request and threw Kim Chunchu in prison. He only escaped through bribery and cunning. His first gambit failed. Spurned by his neighbor Kim Chunchu, made a decision that would change the destiny of the entire peninsula. He boarded a ship and sailed west across the Yellow Sea to the court of the most powerful nation in the world, the Tang Dynasty of China. When you hear this, a cold dread settles in your stomach. It is a feeling passed down in your bones, a memory of the Han commanderies from centuries ago. You know what it means to have a Chinese army on your soil. You know that dragons do not offer help for free. Their price is always steep. Inviting the Tang Emperor to intervene is not a strategy. It is a desperate final prayer. It is setting your own house on fire in the hopes that the flames will consume your enemies. You look at your grandson, his face grim as he sharpens his spear, and you know that the world is about to change forever. He will not be fighting the same wars you did. The arrival of the Tang forces is a spectacle of terrifying grandeur. You see them from a hilltop as they disembark. It is not an army, it is a force of nature. An endless river of men, more than 100,000 of them, pours onto your shores. Their armor glares in the sun, their silk banners snap in the sea breeze. They move with a discipline that makes your own Silla army look like a disorganized militia. They bring with them advanced siege weapons, towering catapults, and massive crossbows that you have only heard of in fearful whispers. This is the might that will be unleashed upon your rivals. This is the price of your king's desperation. The first target is Baekje, the kingdom that has been Silla's bitterest rival for centuries. A sophisticated and proud nation is about to be erased from the earth. The combined Silla-Tang army, a juggernaut of unimaginable power, smashes into Baekje territory. Your grandson is there, a small part of the Silla force commanded by the legendary General Kim Yushin. He marches alongside the silent professional Tang soldiers, feeling both protected and intimidated by their presence. The campaign culminates at the Battle of Hwangsanbeil. This is Baekje's last tragic stand. Your grandson stands on one side of the battlefield, looking at the paltry force assembled to stop them. It is just 5,000 men led by General Gebaek. You hear later what Gebaek did before the battle? Convinced that defeat was inevitable, he returned to his home and killed his own wife and children. He told his men, "It is better they die by my hand than be enslaved by the enemy." Your grandson now faces an army of ghost men who have already said goodbye to the world. Men who are fighting not for victory, but for a good death. The battle is a horrific slaughter. The Baekje forces, outnumbered 10-1, charge 4 times, fighting with the fury of despair. But they are eventually overwhelmed and annihilated. Soon after, the Silla-Tang army stands before the gates of Sabai, the beautiful capital of Baekje. King Waja, his will broken, surrenders. The kingdom of Baekje, a center of art, trade, and culture for over 600 years, is extinguished in a matter of months. Your grandson walks through the streets of the conquered capital. He sees Tang soldiers looting the magnificent palaces, sacred temples, burning the people of Baekje, weeping in the streets. He is a victor, but the taste of victory is ash. These are not just enemies. Their language is almost the same as his. They worship the same Buddha. They are a kindred people. He feels a profound sense of loss as if he has just helped murder a cousin. A fellow Scylla soldier trying to be cheerful claps him on the back. "Good news," he says. "We don't have to worry about Bekje raiding us anymore." Your grandson looks at the smoke rising from a burning library and mutters, "Right. Now we just have to worry about our new friends." With Bekia vanquished, the Alliance turns its cold gaze north to the real prize Goguryeo. This is no easy victory. Goguryeo is a nation of warriors, a vast northern empire that has been the bulwark against Chinese aggression for 700 years. They once famously annihilated a Sui dynasty army of over 1 million men. Fighting them is like punching a mountain. Your grandson, now a battle-scarred veteran, is marched north. The war against Goguryeo is a long, brutal, grinding nightmare. He fights in the freezing Manchurian winters, the cold so intense it feels like a physical blow. He participates in sieges against Goguryeo's legendary mountain fortresses, marvels of engineering built into the very rock that hold out for months against the combined Silla-Tang assault. It is here that he first sees the Gema Musa Goguryeo's famed cataphracts. They are terrifying apparitions, both horse and rider, completely encased in iron plates, charging with heavy lances. They look like demons of war, an unstoppable force of living metal. The Silla infantry breaks before them more than once, and only the superior numbers and siegecraft of the Tang army manage to hold the line. For years the war is a stalemate. Goguryeo's resistance is ferocious. But like Gojoseon, so many centuries before the mortal blow, comes not from without, but from within. The kingdom's powerful dictator, the general Yeon Gaisomun, who had once imprisoned Kim Chunchu, dies. His death creates a power vacuum, and his sons, instead of uniting against the invaders, immediately begin to fight one another for control. It is a catastrophic, selfish civil war. One son, in a final act of treason, defects to the Tang and leads their armies through Goguryeo's secret defensive routes. The kingdom's will is broken. In the year 668, the Allied forces lay siege to the great city of Pyongyang. A traitor inside opens the gates. The city falls. The kingdom of Goguryeo, the pride of the north, the shield of the peninsula, is no more. Your grandson stands on the battlements of the conquered city, looking out over a kingdom that no longer exists. The war is over. The three kingdoms are united. But as he looks at the Tang commanders already drawing up new maps and giving orders to their troops, he feels a growing sense of dread. The wolves have been slain, but the dragon is now sleeping in his house. The celebrations of victory are brief. The Tang dynasty reveals its true intentions. They have no plans to leave. They see this not as an act of liberation for Silla, but as a reconquest of ancient Han territory. They establish the Protectorate General to pacify the East, a military government designed to rule the entire peninsula. They treat Silla not as an ally, but as a vassal state. The price of the dragon's help is everything. This is the great betrayal, the moment of truth for Silla. Did their king, who is now dead and succeeded by his son, promise this all along? Future historians will sift through the records of both kingdoms and debate the original terms of the alliance. Was Silla promised only the lands of Baekje, with Goguryeo's territory going to the Tang? Or was the Tang presence always meant to be temporary, a lie from the start? For your grandson, the academic questions don't matter. All he knows is that the man he fought alongside yesterday is his enemy today. The war for unification is over. The war for independence has just begun. King Munmu, son of the great diplomat Kim Chunchu and successor to the throne, makes a cunning and ruthless decision. He will fight the Tang, and he will use the ghosts of his former enemies to do it. Silla begins to secretly fund and support Baekje and Goguryeo revival movements. Your grandson finds himself fighting in a bizarre new army. Standing next to him in the shield wall is a former Goguryeo soldier, a man whose comrades he was killing just a year ago. They are now united by a common hatred for the Tang occupiers. An officer addresses the troops before a siege on a Tang-held fortress. "All right, men," he says with a wry smile. "New orders. Remember everything the Tang army taught us about taking down a fortress? I want you to use it against them. And try to look surprised when it works. For nearly a decade, the peninsula is ravaged by this new war. It is a confusing, treacherous conflict fought in the ruins of the old kingdoms. But Silla's strategy is brilliant. They have the home field advantage and a populace now inflamed with a sense of national identity forged in resistance to a foreign occupier. Finally exhausted and overextended, the mighty Tang dynasty agrees to withdraw its main forces to north of the Taedong River. The war is won. Silla is finally the master of its own destiny. The peninsula is united under a single crown. You are an ancient man now, your life having spanned the final violent death of an entire era. Your grandson comes home. He is not the boy who left. He is in his 40s, his face a mask of scars, his eyes holding a weariness that you recognize. He is a survivor of 30 years of non-stop warfare. There is peace for the first time in anyone's memory. But you sit with him under the eaves of your small hut and you ask him about the price. He tells you that the unified Silla is a smaller Silla. The vast northern plains of Goguryeo, the ancestral homeland, stretching deep into Manchuria, are lost. They have been swallowed by other rising kingdoms gone forever. He tells you of the cultures that have been erased. The unique art of Baekje, the fierce spirit of Goguryeo, they are being suppressed, sanded down and absorbed into the Silla way of life. Unity has been achieved through the forced extinction of diversity. He looks at his small plot of land, the meager reward for a lifetime of service. We fought for 30 years to unify the three kingdoms. He says, his voice devoid of pride. And my reward is unifying these 3 rows of turnips. Seems fair. The bards and court poets will compose epic songs about the glorious unification, about the wisdom of King Muyol, and the valor of General Kim Yushin. But you in your quiet village know the terrible truth. The single gleaming crown of unified Silla was paid for with 2 shattered ones. It was purchased with a devil's bargain, a betrayal of an ally, and the blood of 3 generations. It was a victory, yes, but one that left the nation smaller, haunted by the ghosts of the brothers it had killed and forever defined by the brutal, bloody price of a single crown. The peace of a unified Silla, the peace your grandfather witnessed being born from so much blood and betrayal, could not last. A kingdom built on a foundation as rigid and unjust as the bone rank system will eventually collapse under its own weight. For 2 centuries Silla reigned, but it was a slow, steady decay, a gilded cage slowly rotting from the inside out. In the capital Gyeongju, the true bone aristocracy with no more worlds to conquer turned their energies inward. They built lavish pleasure gardens, held decadent poetry contests, and engaged in endless, intricate power struggles, growing ever more distant from the people they ruled. While they feasted, the countryside starved. The government, run by men who inherited their posts rather than earning them, became corrupt and ineffective. Taxes rose, famine became common, and the resentment of the common people suppressed for centuries finally began to boil over. You are born into this new chaotic world. You are a peasant farmer in the southwestern part of the peninsula, the lands that once belonged to the kingdom of Baekje. You feel no loyalty to the Silla king and his faraway capital. He is a foreign ruler whose tax collectors are like locusts stripping your village of what little you have. You hear stories of rebellions, of farmers taking up their sickles and bamboo spears against the local magistrates. Soon the rebellions grow. Ambitious local warlords, sensing the weakness of the central government, begin carving out their own domains. The peninsula once again fractures. The later Three Kingdoms period has begun, and you are caught in the crossfire. Your life is one of fear and uncertainty. One month you pay tribute to a local strongman who promises protection. The next, a Silla army marches through, burning your village for supporting a traitor. The dream of unity is a forgotten memory. Chaos is king once again. From this turmoil, a new leader emerges. His name is Wang Geon, the son of a wealthy and powerful merchant clan from the port city of Gyeong. He is not like the Silla aristocrats. He is a pragmatist, a brilliant strategist, and a charismatic leader of men. He understands power, both military and economic. He begins as a general in the service of a larger warlord, but his ambition and competence soon eclipse his masters. Through a series of clever alliances, decisive battles, and diplomatic maneuvers, he consolidates his power. He doesn't just conquer, he absorbs. He welcomes defeated enemies into his ranks. Finally, in the year 935, the last king of Silla, seeing the hopelessness of his situation, travels to Gyeong and peacefully surrenders his crumbling kingdom to Wanggeon. The Goryeo dynasty is born not in a final cataclysmic battle, but with the quiet, weary sigh of an old kingdom giving up the ghost. Wang Jeon, now King Taejo, is wise. He knows that building a new dynasty is harder than winning a war. Before his death, he leaves behind a document for his successors, a set of guiding principles known as the 10 Injunctions. It is a remarkable glimpse into the mind of the founder. He stresses the importance of Buddhism as the state's spiritual protector. He warns his descendants to rule justly, but there are darker, more pragmatic instructions as well. He cautions his heirs to be wary of the men from the southwest, the former lands of Baekje. He claims the geography of that region breeds treacherous and rebellious men, and that they should not be appointed to high office. You, a man whose ancestors were from Baekje, feel the sting of this proclamation. Even in this new dynasty which promised a fresh start, the old prejudices and divisions are codified into its very foundation. The capital of this new dynasty is Wanggeon's home base, the bustling, fortified city of Gyeong. It is a declaration of a new beginning, a break from the past. You, having survived the chaos of the wars, have managed to find a new life here. Perhaps you are a carpenter helping to build the new palaces, or a clerk in a merchant's warehouse. You have come to the capital seeking opportunity, and at first it is intoxicating. Gyeong is a world away from your dusty village. It is a vibrant hub of international trade. You see merchants from Song Dynasty China in their fine silks, and occasionally you spot darker-skinned men with hooked noses and strange robes. Traders from the distant Arab world who have followed the sea routes to this new center of power. The skyline is dominated by the graceful sloping roofs of magnificent Buddhist temples. Their great bronze bells ring out across the city at dawn and dusk, a calming, resonant sound that promises peace and spiritual order. It is here that you first lay eyes upon the treasure of your age, Goryeo Celadon. In a market stall, you see a simple bowl, but its color takes your breath away. It is a subtle, ethereal jade green, a color that seems to have captured a piece of the sky on a perfect spring day. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. This is the Goryeo that will be remembered, a kingdom of profound faith and unparalleled artistic achievement. But as you live and work in Gyeong, you begin to see the cracks in the beautiful jade glaze. You realize that the new dynasty has simply replaced one set of masters with another. The Silla bone rank system is officially gone, but a new powerful aristocracy has taken its place. It is formed from the great clans who helped Wanggeon rise to power, the wealthy merchant families, and the descendants of Silla nobles who were quick to switch their allegiance. These powerful families dominate every aspect of the government and the economy, and they ensure their power remains hereditary through a clever system called Yumseo. You learn about Yumseo from your neighbor, a pale, stooped scholar, who has dedicated his life to studying for the Gwagyo, the civil service examination. The Gwagyo is in theory a path for any talented man to rise in the government based on merit. But the Yumseo rule states that if your father or grandfather reach the 5th rank or higher in the bureaucracy, you are entitled to a government post automatically without ever having to sit for the exam. Your neighbor studies by candlelight until his eyes ache, memorizing thousands of lines of classical poetry and philosophy. He passes the exam with distinction, but his post is a minor one, and he is stuck there. Meanwhile, the son of a high minister, a young man you know to be lazy, arrogant, and barely literate, is appointed to a high-ranking position in the Ministry of Rights. This is the reality of Goryeo's meritocracy. You joke with your neighbor, how do you get a job in the Goryeo government? There are two paths. The hard path: study for 20 years, master the classics, and pass the exam. The easy path: be born. He doesn't laugh. The luxury of this new aristocracy, their sprawling mansions, their silken robes, their exquisite Celadon collections, is built on a foundation of human misery. You learn the word nobi. It means slave. A huge portion of Goryeo's population, perhaps as many as 1 in 3 people, are nobi. Their status is hereditary, passed down through the mother. If your mother is a nobi, you are born a nobi, and you will die a nobi. They are not considered people. They are property like cattle or furniture. They can be bought and sold, beaten at will, and given away as part of a wedding dowry. As a commoner, you live in constant low-level fear of becoming one of them. A bad harvest, a single crushing debt to a wealthy aristocrat, and you could be forced to sell your children or even yourself into hereditary slavery. You walk past the vast estate of a minister, and you see the Nobi toiling in his fields from sunrise to sunset. You look at that beautiful celadon vase in the market, and you realize it was made from clay dug by slaves, turned on a wheel by a slave artisan, and fired in a kiln stoked by slaves. Goryeo society is a beautiful house built on a dungeon, and no one wants to look at the foundations. The heart of the kingdom. The royal palace is the most dangerous place of all. It is a nest of vipers. The Goryeo court is a tempest of competing interests, the powerful aristocratic clans, constantly jockeying for royal favor. The influential Buddhist abbots who command immense wealth and political sway, the scheming eunuchs who control access to the king and the royal concubines, each trying to ensure her own son inherits the throne. Power is a slippery, bloody prize, and the history of the court is written in a cycle of coups and purges. You live through one of the most infamous. The king is young, and his father-in-law, a man named Yi Jagyum, from the powerful Inju Li clan, has amassed enormous power. To secure his family's position, he has married two of his own daughters to the young king. He is now both the king's father-in-law and his grandfather-in-law. His power becomes nearly absolute, rivaling the king's own. He grows arrogant, and he decides he wants the throne for himself. He attempts to poison the king. The plot is discovered, and the palace erupts into open warfare. Rival factions loyal to the king and to Yi Jagyum fight pitched battles in the palace courtyards. From your home in the city, you see the smoke rising from behind the palace walls. You hear the screams and the clash of steel. You bar your door, extinguish your lights, and pray that the violence remains contained. Yi Jagyum is eventually defeated, but the court is left scarred and paranoid. Decades later, another more violent storm breaks. For generations, the civilian officials, the scholars, and aristocrats who got their posts through study or birth have looked down upon the military commanders. They treat the generals with contempt, even though it is the army that protects the kingdom. In the year 1170, this resentment explodes. During a royal banquet, a young, drunken civilian official humiliates a high-ranking general. It is the final straw. A group of military commanders led by the general Zhong Jungbu gives a silent signal. They draw their swords and begin a systematic slaughter of every civilian official at the party. The coup is swift and horrifically bloody. This event ushers in a century of brutal military dictatorship. The kings become mere puppets. A succession of generals rules the country with an iron fist. Future historians will debate the causes of this coup. Was it a simple power grab by resentful soldiers, or the inevitable collapse of a system that put so much emphasis on civilian literary achievement while neglecting the defenders of the state? For you, it simply means that the scholarly tyrants have been replaced by thuggish ones, men who are even more rapacious and even less concerned with justice. Life in Goryeo is a lesson in precariousness. You learn to keep your head down. You hear the guards on the street corner joking. I've served 3 kings, 4 chief ministers, and 2 generals who declared themselves regent, says one. The key to survival. Learn who to bow to that morning. It's a cynical joke, but it's true. The political winds in Gyeong can shift in an instant, and being loyal to the wrong man today can mean your head is on a spike tomorrow. The kingdom's official motto might be peace and prosperity, but the court's favorite season seems to be treason. You stand on a hill overlooking the city. You see the temple roofs gleaming in the afternoon sun and hear the faint, peaceful sound of a distant bell. You think of the exquisite art, the profound Buddhist philosophy, and the bustling trade that make your kingdom the envy of its neighbors. It is a beautiful, sophisticated gilded cage. But you know that the bars of the cage were forged in the fires of prejudice and slavery? You know that the floor is slippery with the blood of countless coups and purges. You live your life with the unsettling knowledge that the serene surface of Goryeo is just a fragile veneer, and that the vipers in the court are always coiled, always waiting for the right moment to strike. The gilded cage of Goryeo, with its vipers endlessly wrestling for power, was a society pointed inward, obsessed with its own intricate games of status and betrayal. But the world is larger than one kingdom, and a storm was gathering on the vast northern steppes, a storm so immense it would scour the known world from Poland to the Pacific. It was a force of nature, a nation on horseback, and its arrival would make the bitterest Goryeo court rivalry seem like a childish squabble. At first you only hear rumors. Traders coming down the overland route speak of a new Khan, a leader who has united the scattered nomadic tribes. They call him Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. The stories they tell are fantastical, hard to believe. They speak of armies that cover the plains like locusts of warriors who can sleep in the saddle and shoot arrows with deadly accuracy while at a full gallop. They say these warriors are utterly without mercy, that when they conquer a city, they often leave nothing behind but a pyramid of skulls. You and your neighbors in Gyeong listen to these tales and shake your heads. Travelers have always exaggerated. Then the rumors become real. A tribe of Khitans fleeing the Mongol advance spills across the Yalu River into Goryeo territory. They are a desperate marauding army. Soon after, the Mongols themselves arrive, chasing their prey. A combined Goryeo-Mongol force corners and defeats the Khitans. For a moment, it seems you have found a powerful new ally. The Mongol generals are polite, but then they present their bill for services rendered. They classify Goryeo as a brother nation and demand a staggering amount of tribute gold, silver cloth, and thousands of fine horses. It is a demand wrapped in a threat. They leave envoys to ensure the tribute is collected. The stories were not exaggerations. A predator of unimaginable strength has just learned your name. For several years, a tense peace holds. Goryeo's military government, led by the powerful Choi family, resents the Mongol demands. They delay the tribute payments, hoping the problem will simply go away. The problem does not go away. In 1265, a Mongol envoy returning to the north after being frustrated by the Goryeo court is found murdered in a river valley. No one knows for sure who killed him, but the Mongols don't care about the details. Their messenger has been killed, their honor insulted. They demand that the killers be found and that the king himself come to the Mongol court to apologize. Goryeo's military dictators, arrogant and accustomed to absolute power within their own small kingdom, refuse. It is an act of suicidal defiance. In 1231, the storm breaks. Ogedei Khan, son of Genghis, dispatches an army to punish the insolent kingdom. You have seen war before. You have heard stories of the old wars between Silla and Baekje. This is nothing like that. The Mongol army moves with terrifying speed and purpose. They are not interested in capturing territory in the old way. They surround a city and demand its surrender. If the city complies, it is spared, but must pay a ruinous tribute. If it resists, the fate is annihilation. Their siegecraft is a thing of horror. They have learned the techniques of every nation they have conquered, employing massive catapults, battering rams and siege towers. They fill moats with the bodies of their prisoners. You watch from the walls of Gyeong as the wave of destruction rolls down the peninsula. City after city falls, and then the military dictator Choi Yu and the royal court make a decision that will forever be remembered as the ultimate act of betrayal. They will not stand and fight for their capital. They will not defend their people. They decide to flee. Their destination is Ganghwa Island, a large defensible island just off the coast whose treacherous currents make it all but unassailable by a non-naval power like the Mongols. You watch in stunned disbelief as the great evacuation begins. The royal family, the high aristocrats, the wealthy ministers, and their vast treasures are loaded onto hundreds of boats. They sail away to their island fortress, leaving the entire mainland and its population to the mercy of the Mongols. The government issues a decree ordering the common people to flee to the mountains and other small islands. The ruling class has saved itself and abandoned you to hell. Your life is now that of a fugitive in your own country. This is not war as you have ever understood it. It is an apocalypse. For the next 30 years, this is your reality. You and your family flee to a remote mountain fortress, a crude sanctuary of stone and wood crammed with other desperate refugees. Survival is your only concern. The most terrifying sight in the world becomes a simple cloud of dust on the horizon, the sign of a Mongol patrol. When the alarm is raised, you scramble for cover, hiding in caves or dense thickets, your heart pounding in your chest, praying they do not find you. The Mongols are masters of psychological terror. They systematically destroy crops and burn granaries, waging a war of starvation. You learn to eat things you never thought of as food acorns, tree bark, tough roots. Hunger becomes a constant, dull ache in your belly. The bleakest joke imaginable makes the rounds in your hideout. At least the Goryeo tax collectors haven't found us. A man says, his voice a dry rasp. Another refugee sharpening a bamboo spear replies without looking up. Give them time. I'm sure the Mongols will appoint new ones. But your people do not simply surrender. The resistance is fierce, desperate, and heroic. You hear stories that give you a sliver of hope. At the fortress of Chewanseong, a Mongol army led by the fearsome general Saratai is laying siege. From within the fortress, a Buddhist monk named Kim Yun-hu, a man of peace forced into the role of a warrior, takes aim with his bow. He lets an arrow fly a single prayer against a hurricane. The arrow strikes Saratai, killing him instantly. The Mongol army, its commander dead, falls into confusion and retreats. It is a miraculous victory, a moment of light in an ocean of darkness. But these victories are small and localized. The Mongol horde is vast. They always come back. You learn of their cruelest tactics. You are captured during a raid on your fortress, but you are not killed immediately. You and the other able-bodied men are tied together and forced to march at the front of the Mongol column as they advance on the next fortified town. You are a human shield. You must march toward your own countrymen, who must either shoot through you to hit the enemy or hold their fire. You scream, telling them your name, begging them not to shoot, but your voice is lost in the din of war. It is a tactic of unimaginable cruelty designed to break the spirit as much as the body. Meanwhile, on Ganghwa Island, the aristocrats live in a strange, isolated bubble. They build new palaces and continue their luxurious lives, safe from the horrors you are enduring. To fight the war, they turn to spiritual means. They begin a monumental undertaking, the recarving of the Tripitaka Koreana, the entire Buddhist canon. They believe this colossal act of devotion, carving the sacred texts onto more than 80,000 double-sided woodblocks, will earn the protection of the Buddha and drive the invaders from the land. Future historians will debate their motives. Was it a genuine act of profound piety, a nation's soul crying out to heaven for salvation? Or was it also a canny political move, a massive state-sponsored project to keep the refugee population on the island busy and to assert the government's legitimacy while the mainland burned? For you, this spiritual warfare feels like a bitter irony. You hear that the Mongols have reached the old Silla capital of Gyeongju. There they burn down Hwangryongsa, the temple of the imperial dragon, and its magnificent 9-story wooden pagoda, a wonder of the world that had stood for 600 years. You also hear that the original Tripitaka, carved centuries ago to fend off another invasion, has been found and burned by the Mongols at Winsa. While your government carves new holy texts on their safe island, the Mongols are turning your history and your heritage to ash. The war grinds on for 3 decades. 6 major invasions sweep across the peninsula. A generation is born and comes of age knowing nothing but hiding and starvation. Finally, something gives. The Choi military dictatorship, which has ruled Goryeo for 4 generations, is overthrown in a coup on Ganghwa Island. A new faction, one that believes further resistance is futile, takes control. The king, who has been a puppet his entire life, is now free to act. He sends envoys to the Mongols, he surrenders. The war is over. You and the other survivors slowly emerge from your mountain hideouts. You are a ghost returning to a ghost land. The world you knew is gone. You walk through valleys where villages once stood, and you find only scorched earth and rubble. The fields are choked with weeds. The survivors you meet are skeletal figures, their eyes hollowed out by trauma. You return to the ruins of Gyeong. Soon after, the king and the court make their grand return from Ganghwa Island. You watch their procession, the aristocrats in their silk robes looking well-fed and self-satisfied. They are celebrating the return of peace. You look at their faces and you feel a quiet, bottomless contempt. You have paid the price for their survival. Goryeo is not wiped from the map, but it is put in chains. It becomes a vassal state of the vast Mongol Yuan dynasty, which now rules all of China. The terms of the surrender are utterly humiliating. The Goryeo crown prince must be sent to the Yuan capital Dadu, modern-day Beijing, to be raised, and he must marry a Mongol princess. The future kings of Goryeo will now have the blood of the conquerors flowing in their veins. Your kingdom becomes known derisively as the son-in-law nation. The Mongols also station officials called darugachi in Goryeo to oversee the government and ensure their interests are served. And then there is the tribute. Not just goods, but people. The Yuan court demands a constant supply of Goryeo women to serve as concubine servants and tea slaves in the Mongol palace. This human tribute becomes a source of enduring national trauma. Every few years, officials sweep through the country selecting young, unmarried women to be sent away never to be seen again. You live in terror that your daughter, sister, or niece will be chosen. Some families begin to marry off their daughters at incredibly young ages, hoping they will be passed over. The pro-Mongol Goryeo aristocrats eagerly collaborate, adopting Mongol hairstyles and language to curry favor with their new overlords. You sit with other old men amidst the rubble of a rebuilt tea house. You have survived the apocalypse. You have endured the unendurable. An old man sighs, his voice cracked with age and sorrow. In Old Silla, he says, "Our life was ruled by the quality of our bones. In Goryeo, it was ruled by the whims of aristocrats. Now our life is ruled by our son-in-law's angry relatives." Another man trying to find a sliver of light replies, "At least they're family." The first man spits onto the dusty ground. Some family. The century of Mongol domination left your kingdom of Goryeo a broken nation, a sick man gasping for breath. The kings who sat on the throne were often more Mongol than Korean, raised in the glittering Yuan capital of Dadu. Married to Mongol princesses, their loyalties forever divided. The old Goryeo aristocracy, those who collaborated most eagerly with the Yuan overlords, grew fantastically wealthy and corrupt, their vast estates swallowing up farmland while the state treasury withered. To make matters worse, the seas were no longer safe. Japanese pirates, the Woku, raided the southern coastline with impunity, burning towns and carrying off people and goods. The kingdom was rotting from the head down, and you, a commoner, felt the decay and the gnawing uncertainty of your daily life. But in this despair, two new forces were rising. The first was a man, General Yi Seonggye. He was a warrior of legendary prowess, a hero who had made his name defending the northern frontiers and driving the pirates back into the sea. In an age of weak kings and corrupt nobles, he was a symbol of strength and integrity, and the common people adored him. The second force was an idea, Neo-Confucianism. A new generation of brilliant reform-minded scholar officials, disgusted with the state of the kingdom, looked for a new way. They found it in the ancient teachings of Confucius, reinterpreted and supercharged into a comprehensive philosophy for everything from statecraft to personal morality. They saw the rampant corruption and blamed the influence of Buddhism, which had been the state religion for nearly 1,000 years. They believed its focus on the afterlife and its vast, untaxed temple estates had drained the kingdom's spirit and its wealth. They dreamed of building a new society, a perfect society based on logic, order, hierarchy, and civic virtue. The final dramatic act came in 1388. In China, the Mongol Yuan dynasty had finally crumbled, replaced by the powerful new Ming dynasty. The Ming emperor sent a message to Goryeo, arrogantly demanding the return of a huge swath of northern territory that was once under Mongol control. The Goryeo court, in a final spectacular act of incompetence, decided to answer this demand with war. They ordered General Yi Seonggye to lead the entire Goryeo army to invade the Liaodong Peninsula and attack the mighty Ming. It was a suicide mission. You hear the news as the army marches north. Every sane person knows this is madness. To attack the new master of the known world is to invite annihilation. General Yi and his army reached the Yalu River, halting at a place called Waiwa Island. The summer monsoons had begun. The river was a swollen, impassable torrent. The soldiers were sick with disease, their bows rendered useless by the damp. Morale was at rock bottom. It was at the river's edge that General Yi made the most fateful decision in your nation's history. He had two choices: led his men across the river to certain death for a corrupt king, or turn back and save them. He chose his men. In an act of stunning treason, he turned his entire army around and marched south back towards the capital. You are a low-level clerk in Gyeong. The city is buzzing with rumors, then panic. The army is coming back. Not defeated, but defiant. You watch from a rooftop as General Yi's disciplined troops, the finest soldiers in the kingdom, enter the city gates. There is very little fighting. The royal guards are no match for these battle-hardened veterans. The king is swiftly deposed, the leading pro-war officials are executed, and General Yi Seong-gye takes control of the state. After a few years of ruling through puppet kings, he finally takes the throne himself in 1392 with the backing of the Neo-Confucian scholars. The Goryeo dynasty, after nearly 500 years, is dead. A new dynasty, Joseon, is born. This is more than just a change of rulers. It is a revolution. One of the first acts of the new king, now called Taejo, is to abandon Gyeong, a city he sees as irredeemably stained by Goryeo's decadence and spiritual corruption. He moves the capital to a new location, a place chosen according to the strict principles of geomancy, nestled in a valley and protected by mountains. He names it Hanyang. You will one day know it as Seoul. This new city, with its wide grid-like avenues and its carefully placed palaces and shrines, is to be the heart of a new kind of society, a perfect, rational Neo-Confucian state. And you will soon discover that living in a perfect society is like living in a straitjacket. The new order is one of extreme social control, all justified by the pursuit of moral perfection. Society is divided into a rigid hierarchy. At the top is the king, the benevolent father of the nation. Below him are the Yangban, the scholar official class who rule on his behalf. Then come the Jungjin, the middle people, technical experts like doctors and translators. Below them are the vast majority of the population, the Sungmin, or commoners like farmers and craftsmen. And at the very bottom are the Honmin, the despised people butchers, leather tanners, and the enormous population of slaves. Your place in this hierarchy defines your entire existence. The first victim of this new order is Buddhism. The Neo-Confucian scholars launch an all-out war against the religion that once defined your culture. You watch as hundreds of Buddhist temples, which owned vast tax-exempt lands and commanded immense political influence in Goryeo, are stripped of their wealth. Their land is seized and redistributed to the state and the new Yangban elite. The number of monks is severely restricted. They are now seen as social parasites, men who shave their heads in defiance of Confucian filial piety and contribute nothing to the state. You see magnificent temples that were once centers of learning and art fall into disrepair, their bells silent for the first time in centuries. The vibrant, colorful spiritual life of Goryeo is systematically replaced by the austere, black and white morality of the Confucian classics. The most profound and terrible change, however, is what happens to women. In Goryeo, women, particularly of the elite class, enjoyed a surprising degree of freedom. They could inherit and manage property alongside their brothers and socialized freely. Crucially, a widow was free to remarry without social stigma. This all changes under Joseon's rigid patriarchal code. A woman's highest virtue is now defined as lifelong fidelity to a single man. The three followings are drilled into every woman: obey your father in youth, your husband in marriage, and your son in old age. For aristocratic women, remarriage becomes a cardinal sin, an act of unforgivable impurity. A new law is passed that is both bizarre and cruel. The sons of any remarried Yangban woman are permanently barred from taking the civil service exams. This means a widow's decision to find love again would utterly destroy the future of her children, ruining the family line. You have a widowed cousin. During the Goryeo era, she would have grieved and then likely found a new husband, starting a new chapter of her life. Now in Joseon, she is expected to live in chaste seclusion for the rest of her days, a virtuous woman honoring her dead husband's memory. Her life, for all intents and purposes, ended when his did. You hear a cynical joke whispered among the women in the market. What's the difference between a Goryeo widow and a Joseon widow? The Goryeo widow gets a new husband. The Joseon widow gets a memorial stone from the government praising her for a lifetime of loneliness. While the lives of the elite are being reshaped by these new moral codes, your life at the bottom changes little or, in some ways, gets worse. The new dynasty promised reform, but the institution of slavery becomes even more deeply entrenched. The nobi are essential to the new economic order, providing the labor for the state and for the vast agricultural estates of the Yangban. Future historians will debate whether slavery in Joseon was harsher than in Goryeo, but you know that the new legal codes make the nobi status more inescapable than ever. The line between the despised people and commoners is drawn more sharply. As a farmer, you no longer pay rent to a Goryeo lord who quoted Buddhist scripture, but to a Joseon Yangban who quotes Confucius. My grandfather's back ached from bowing to a Goryeo noble. You grumble to a friend while working the fields. My back aches from bowing to a Joseon Yangban. Progress. There are benefits you must admit. The new dynasty brings stability. King Taizhou and his formidable sons particularly, the future King Taizong, are brilliant administrators and military men. They crush the last vestiges of the Wokou pirates. They solidify the northern border, establishing the modern-day frontiers of Korea. There is peace. But it is the peace of a meticulously managed prison. The atmosphere is one of constant social surveillance. Your every action is judged. Did you perform the ancestral rites correctly? Did you show the proper deference when a Yangban passed you on the road? Did you utter a word that could be construed as disrespectful to the king or the sages? A misstep can lead to a brutal flogging or worse. You are an artisan, a potter. In Goryeo, your work inspired by Buddhist themes was celebrated for its creative beauty. Now, under the new regime, commerce and craft are looked down upon. The scholar is the ideal man. Everyone else is secondary. Your pottery is now judged on its simplicity, its adherence to prescribed forms, its utility. Creativity and innovation are often viewed with suspicion, as they can disrupt the harmony of the established order. You watch a group of young Yangban students in their pristine robes arguing heatedly in a courtyard. Are they solving the kingdom's pressing problems like the drought? You ask someone. No, comes the reply. They are engaged in a furious 3-day debate about the historically correct way to fold their sleeves for an ancestral rite that won't happen for another 6 months. You live to be an old man, one of the few left who can remember the final chaotic days of Goryeo. You have seen one world die and another being built in its place. You appreciate the order. You appreciate that your village isn't being burned down by pirates. But you feel a profound sense of loss. The vibrant, colorful, and sometimes chaotic soul of Goryeo has been systematically extinguished and replaced by something rigid, austere, and judgmental. The Joseon dynasty has put your nation in a straitjacket. It is a garment stitched together with the threads of filial piety, loyalty, and social harmony. But it is a straitjacket nonetheless, one that binds society in the name of a perfect moral order, and in doing so constricts the life out of anyone who does not or cannot fit its perfect, unforgiving mold. You have lived your life at the bottom of the great Joseon pyramid. You have been the farmer, the artisan, the commoner, looking up at the distant, awesome power of the king. You have seen him only in grand processions, a remote figure draped in brilliant yellow silk, the living symbol of the state, the son of heaven on earth. His life seems one of unimaginable luxury and absolute power, but that is the view from the outside. To understand the terrible truth at the heart of this kingdom, to understand the paranoia that fuels the entire system, you can no longer be a spectator. For this journey, you must sit on the dragon throne itself. The story is no longer about them. It's about you. You are the king. The first thing you notice is the weight. The ceremonial robes embroidered with golden dragons are incredibly heavy on your shoulders, a constant physical reminder of your burden. The crown feels tight around your temples. You sit on the throne in the vast audience hall, its polished floors reflecting the rows of silent bowing officials. Their faces are impassive masks of deference. You look at them, your ministers, your counselors, and you wonder, which of you is loyal, which of you plots against me in the dead of night? Which of you belongs to a faction that would see my cousin, my uncle, or my half-brother on this throne instead of me? Your life is a gilded prison, a theater of endless ritual. You do not simply eat a meal, you preside over a royal banquet. Dozens of dishes are brought before you, but you cannot touch a single one until a young court lady, the Gimi Changgongnu, tastes at first her life forfeit if the food holds poison. You do not sleep with a woman you love. You bestow your favor upon a concubine, knowing she was placed in your harem by her powerful clan to act as their eyes and ears within the palace walls, hoping her son will one day supplant your own. You have no privacy. Two court historians, the recorders, follow you everywhere, their brushes flying across scrolls, documenting your every word, your every sigh, your every decree. Your life is not your own. It is an official record. The palace with its beautiful gardens and serene lotus ponds is not your home. It is the most dangerous place in the kingdom. To get here to this cold and lonely throne, you had to be ruthless. Perhaps you are Yi Bangwan, one of the founding princes of the dynasty. You are a brilliant military commander and a political genius. You bled for this kingdom, helping your father Yi Seong-gye to carve it out of the wreckage of Goryeo. But when the time came for your father to name a successor, he did not choose you, his most capable and ambitious son. He chose your youngest half-brother, a mere boy born of his favorite new wife. The insult is a burning coal in your gut. Your father and his chief minister, Jong Dojon, want to create a dynasty run by ministers where the king is a mere figurehead. They want to strip you and your brothers of your private armies, your power base. You will not let that happen, so you act. On a dark, rainy night, you lead your loyal soldiers in a surprise attack on the palace. You are no longer a prince, you are a predator. You find your rival, the chief minister, at a party and cut him down. Your men hunt your two youngest half-brothers, the crown prince and his brother, and kill them without mercy. You have seized power, but the cost is immense. Your father, the great King Taiyo, is left a broken man, so disgusted by the river of blood you have unleashed that he abdicates the throne and retreats into a life of bitter seclusion. You don't take the throne immediately, that would be too obvious. You place your pliable older brother on it as a puppet for a time. But everyone knows who holds the real power. Eventually you ascend, becoming King Tachong. You are a strong and effective ruler, but you get to the throne by murdering your brothers and breaking your father's heart. This is the first lesson of the crown power is not given. It is taken often from the hands of your own kin. Now you are King Sejong Taijong's son. You are everything a king should be. You are a compassionate ruler, a brilliant scholar, a patron of the arts and sciences. Your reign is the golden age of Joseon. You feel a deep empathy for your people and their struggles. You see that the complex Chinese characters they use for writing are impossibly difficult for commoners to learn, keeping them illiterate and powerless. So you gather your most brilliant scholars in secret and do something revolutionary. You invent a new alphabet for your people. It is simple, elegant, and phonetic. It is called Hunmin Jeongeum, or Hangul, as it is known today. It is one of the greatest acts of cultural creation in your nation's history, a gift to empower generations yet unborn. You are by every measure Sejong the Great, but the throne does not allow for happiness. Even as you work to enlighten your kingdom, the paranoia of your father King Taejong casts a long, dark shadow. He may have abdicated in your favor, but he still wields immense power from behind the scenes, acting as a ruthless guardian of your throne. He sees your wife's family, the Shim clan, as a potential threat. Your father-in-law and his brothers are good men, men you love and respect. But they are powerful, and to your father, power is a threat that must be eliminated. He orchestrates a political purge. He accuses your wife's father and uncles of treason. They are arrested, condemned, and executed. You are the king. You are the supreme ruler. And you are utterly powerless to stop it. You must sit by and watch as your beloved wife, the queen, collapses in grief, her entire family destroyed by your own father to protect you. You try to comfort her, but your words are hollow. The crown is a shield, but it is also a magnet for tragedy. You sigh to your chief scribe during a late-night work session. We have invented a new alphabet, reformed the tax code, and charted the stars. You say, rubbing your tired eyes. but I still haven't figured out how to survive a family dinner. The scribe doesn't crack a smile. The throne's cruelty is not reserved for the great. It is often most savage to the weak. Now you are King Danjong. You are a child only 12 years old when your father dies and you inherit the throne. You are intelligent and kind, but you are a boy. Your world is one of towering adults whispering in corridors, their faces obscured by shadows and ambition. Your father on his deathbed entrusted your care to his most loyal ministers and to your own uncle, the powerful and charismatic Grand Prince Suyang. Your uncle swore a solemn oath to protect you, but you see a hungry look in his eyes, the same look your ancestor Taejong once had. Your uncle moves slowly, patiently, like a tiger stalking its prey. He stages a coup claiming that the loyal ministers protecting you are in fact traitors plotting to usurp the throne. He has them rounded up, tortured, and brutally executed. You are forced to approve their death warrants. You are a child signing away the lives of the only men who stood between you and the tiger. With your protectors gone, you are utterly alone. The pressure from your uncle and his faction is immense. They persuade you that you are too young and weak to rule, that for the good of the kingdom you must abdicate. You give up your throne to your uncle, who becomes King Seijo. He exiles you to a remote corner of the country. For a time, you are allowed to live. But then a few loyalists attempt a pathetic, doomed plot to restore you to power. It is the only excuse your uncle needs. He sentences you, his own nephew, to death. You are 16 years old. The royal executioner arrives at your lonely place of exile with a bowl of poison. Legend will later say that the executioner wept and could not bring himself to do the deed, and that you, the boy king, calmly took your own sash and hanged yourself to spare him the sin of killing you. Your death is not just a murder, it is a political necessity for the man who stole your life. Perhaps the most horrifying story is not one of political murder, but of psychological torment. You are King Yongzhou, ruling centuries later. You are one of Joseon's most successful kings, a master of politics, a reformer who brings stability and prosperity. You are a perfectionist, a model Confucian ruler. But you have one great gaping wound in your life, your son Crown Prince Sado. He is a bitter disappointment. Where you are disciplined, he is erratic. Where you are a dedicated scholar, he despises his studies. He is prone to fits of rage, to acts of bizarre and violent cruelty. He wanders the palace assaulting court servants, his behavior growing more monstrous by the year. You try to guide him, to mold him into a worthy successor, but your constant criticism and high expectations only seem to fuel his madness. The court lives in terror of him. You live in terror of him. He is your son, but he is a monster living within the palace walls. Future generations will debate the cause of his condition. Was he a clinical psychopath? Did he suffer from a severe mental illness? Or was his madness a tragic, inevitable reaction to the crushing, inhuman pressure of being heir to a perfectionist father like you? You don't know the answer. All you know is that you cannot allow him to take the throne. Yet you cannot execute him as a common criminal without violating the most sacred ancestral rights and destroying the legitimacy of the royal house. You arrive at a solution so horrific it will be whispered in horror for centuries. On a blazing hot day in the middle of summer, you order your son, the Crown Prince of Joseon, into the palace courtyard. You point to a large wooden chest used for storing rice. You command him to get inside. Sado, terrified of his father, obeys. The lid is closed and sealed. For 8 days you listen. You hear your son's screams, his desperate pleas for water, his fingernails scratching at the inside of the lid. You hear him slowly go mad with thirst and terror before finally he falls silent. You, the king, have had your own son tortured to death by dehydration and suffocation. It is a brutal, monstrous act. In your mind, it is the only way to save the dynasty from the monster he had become. An official seeing your grim face after the deed is done might offer a dark joke to another. The crown prince was having another one of his episodes. The second replies, "Don't worry, the king found a way to help him. Box up his troubles." The first man stares aghast. "Too soon," the second whispers. "Probably. You have now felt the weight of the crown. You have been the fratricidal founder, the grieving genius, the murdered boy, and the felicital king. The dragon throne is not a seat of luxury, it is a curse. It is the loneliest place on earth, a gilded cage where love is a political liability and family is your most dangerous enemy. The terrible truth of the Yosean monarchy is that the man who holds all the power is also the most powerless, trapped in a relentless pageant of paranoia, forced to make choices that will forever haunt his dreams and stain his soul, all for the sake of the dynasty. You have now felt the crushing weight of the dragon throne, the gilded cage of paranoia and familial betrayal that is the heart of the Joseon court. For 200 years that cage has held. The dynasty forged in the blood of its own princes has settled into a long, stable, and predictable peace. The Neo-Confucian straitjacket, for all its cruelty, has achieved its primary goal: order. But order can breed complacency. Peace can soften the sword arm. 2 centuries is a long enough to forget the taste of true existential fear. You are a farmer living in the southern Gyeongsang province in the late 16th century. The bloody coups of your kingdom's founding are just stories your grandfather tells you, tales as distant as the myths of bear women and gods descending from heaven. Your life is hard, but it is predictable. You plant in the spring, you harvest in the autumn, and you pay your taxes to a local Yangban magistrate who likely got his position because his great-uncle was a famous scholar. In the capital Hanyang, you hear that the court officials are consumed by factional strife, endlessly debating the proper interpretation of a 1,000-year-old rite, while the military is neglected and the coastal fortresses crumble. Whispers arrive from across the sea. A new immensely powerful warlord named Toyotomi Hideyoshi has unified Japan after a century of civil war. He is a man of boundless ambition. Envoys arrive from Japan. You hear they made a shocking demand for Joseon to grant their armies free passage so they can conquer the mighty Ming dynasty in China. You and your neighbors laugh when you hear the news from a traveling merchant. You spit out a sunflower seed shell. The little island monkeys want to conquer the Middle Kingdom. You scoff. They're more likely to drain the sea with a clamshell. Your government, in its arrogant Confucian pride, agrees. They send the Japanese envoys away with a stern, contemptuous refusal. The threat is dismissed. It is a joke. In the spring of 1592, the joke becomes a world-ending nightmare. A vast Japanese fleet larger than any ever seen in your waters appears off the coast of Busan. It carries a battle-hardened army of over 150,000 samurai and Ashigaru foot soldiers. And they have brought with them a new kind of thunder. They carry the Teppo, the arquebus, a matchlock rifle acquired from shipwrecked Portuguese traders. It is a weapon your kingdom has heard of, but has tragically failed to adopt or counter. You are a young man, part of the local garrison at Busan. You stand on the fortress walls, your bow in hand, looking at the swarm of enemy soldiers disembarking. You are nervous, but you trust in your walls and the strength of your commanders. Then the attack begins. It is not the clang of steel and the whistle of arrows you expected. It is a sound from hell. An earth-shattering roar, 1,000 thunderclaps at once fills the air. Smoke billows from the Japanese lines. All around you, men cry out and fall from the walls, struck down by invisible pellets that punch through their leather armor as if it were paper. You see the terror in your commander's eyes. Your arrows are useless against them. Your spears cannot reach them. The sound of the gunfire is demonic, relentless. It shatters your courage, your discipline, your hope. The fortress that was supposed to hold for weeks falls in a matter of hours. The Japanese army, split into several divisions, begins a lightning-fast march north. They are a force unlike any you have ever known. Their commanders are veterans of 100 battles. Their soldiers are disciplined and ruthless. City after city falls. Local magistrates abandon their posts. Joseon generals, their armies dissolving in panic before the terrifying sound of the arquebus, flee in disgrace. The entire state apparatus, so effective at managing Confucian rites and suppressing peasant dissent, proves catastrophically inept at waging actual war. You and your family, hearing that the army is just days away, do what everyone else is doing. You pack a small bundle of food, abandon your home, and join the great terrified river of humanity flowing north, clogging the roads in a desperate attempt to outrun the deluge. You are a shopkeeper in the capital Hanyang. You have watched the stream of refugees pour into the city, bringing with them stories of horror and defeat. The court is in a panic. The Japanese are almost at the city gates, and then the news spreads a rumor so shocking you refuse to believe it at first. King Seonjo, your king, the son of heaven, has fled. In the dead of night, he and the royal court, his ministers and his concubines, have abandoned the capital and are racing towards the Yalu River seeking the protection of their patrons, the Ming Chinese. It is a moment of profound soul-crushing betrayal. It is the flight to Ganghwa Island all over again. The shepherd has abandoned his flock to the wolves. A collective rage erupts in the city. If the king has abandoned his people, then the people owe him no loyalty. You join a mob that surges towards the Gyeongbok Palace. But you are not there to loot its treasures. You head for the buildings that house the state records. Specifically, the slave registries. With a roar of furious triumph, the mob sets the buildings on fire. You watch the wooden tablets and paper scrolls, the documents that have bound hundreds of thousands of people and their descendants to a life of hereditary servitude, turn to black ash and float up into the night sky. It is a moment of pure desperate anarchy, a final defiant scream against a government that has utterly failed you. Your life as a refugee is a blur of starvation and fear. You hide in the woods, you sleep in caves. You learn to fear the sound of a drum or a foreign voice. The Japanese are everywhere, and their cruelty is legendary. They slaughter civilians without a second thought. You hear they have a gruesome quota system. To prove their valor and collect rewards, soldiers are required to bring back the heads of their enemies. But heads are cumbersome. So they begin taking trophies that are easier to transport noses and ears. You hear of great barrels of salted noses being shipped back to Japan to be buried in grotesque monuments. You live in a world where your own face is a potential trophy for an invading soldier. A refugee stumbles into your camp, his face a mask of blood. A Joseon general is an expert on the 36 stratagems for a successful retreat. He croaks before collapsing. At least the Japanese are experts at fighting, but in the void left by the failed state, new heroes rise from the soil of your ravaged land. They are the Webyong, the righteous armies. In your hiding place in the mountains, you see a local Yangbon scholar, a man you once dismissed as a soft-handed intellectual gathering the local farmers. He has traded his silk robes for rough hemp, his writing brush for a sword. You see Buddhist monks, their robes hitched up, teaching peasants how to set ambushes. You join them. You are no soldier, but you are given a sharpened, fire-poked stick, and you are filled with a desperate rage that passes for courage. You attack Japanese supply lines, you harass their patrols, you melt back into the forests. You are a ghost, a hornet, making the invaders pay for every inch of your homeland in blood. And from the sea you hear stories that sound like divine intervention. A naval commander from the south, a man named Yi Sun-sin, is achieving the impossible. With a small fleet, he is utterly annihilating the Japanese navy. The sailors speak of his secret weapon, a ship that looks like a giant sea monster. They call it the Jeobuxion, the turtle ship. It is, they say, covered in an arched iron roof bristling with sharp spikes, making it impossible for the Japanese to board their primary naval tactic. It has cannons mounted on all sides and a great dragon's head at its prow that can belch out clouds of sulfurous smoke to hide its approach. In battle after battle, Yi Sun-sin and his turtle ships smash the Japanese fleets, cutting off their vital supply lines from the sea. His victories are the only reason the Japanese advance on land finally stalls. Eventually, the Ming Emperor, realizing that a Japanese-conquered Korea would be a dagger pointed at the heart of China, sends an army. The war enters a new grinding phase. It is now a contest between two of the world's greatest military powers, and your homeland is the bloody arena. Your village is liberated by the Ming army. They drive the Japanese out, but they are an army of occupation themselves. They are arrogant and often brutal, taking your food, your livestock, and your daughters as they please. You find yourself trapped between an enemy that wants to kill you and an ally who treats you with contempt. It's a difficult choice, you tell a neighbor. The Japanese enemy who wants your nose or the Ming ally who wants your last chicken. The war drags on into a bloody stalemate. Peace talks begin, fail, and begin again. Then in 1597, the talks collapse completely, and Hideyoshi, furious at the defiance of your people, orders a second, even more brutal invasion. Some will later wonder if he even intended to conquer China this time, or if the entire campaign was simply a colossal punitive expedition of pure spite. This time, the orders are to kill, burn, and destroy everything. Just as this new terror is unleashed, the Yosein court, in an act of supreme stupidity, destroys its own greatest hero. Through the scheming of his rivals and the paranoia of the king, Admiral Yi Sun-sin is slandered, arrested, stripped of his command, and tortured. He is replaced by an arrogant fool who promptly sails the entire Joseon navy into a trap where it is almost completely annihilated. With the Japanese navy once again controlling the seas and their armies rampaging on land, your kingdom is on the very brink of extinction. In a panic, the court reinstates Admiral Yi. He is given command of what is left of the navy, a pathetic fleet of just 13 ships. He is ordered to face a Japanese fleet of over 300. What follows is the stuff of legend. At the Battle of Myeongyang, in a narrow, treacherous strait with a crying current, Yi Sun-sin and his 13 ships face the entire Japanese fleet. Using his brilliant understanding of the tides and the terrain, he lures them into the strait and in one of the greatest miracles in the history of naval warfare sinks, or damages over 30 enemy ships without losing a single one of his own. The Japanese fleet retreats in shock and disarray. The war finally ends not with a treaty but with an assassination thousands of miles away. Toyotomi Hideyoshi dies and the order is given for all Japanese forces to withdraw from Korea. In one of the final naval engagements at Noryang, Admiral Yi, chasing the retreating enemy, is struck by a stray Japanese bullet. As he lies dying on the deck of his flagship, his last words to his son and nephew are, "The battle is at its height. Do not announce my death." He dies a hero, his focus on his duty to the very last breath. The storm is over. You stand in the ruins of your village. You look at a field now fallow, and you can still see the glint of broken steel and the white of old bones in the soil. An old man, your neighbor, leans on a hoe and looks at the desolate landscape. "Well," he says, his voice raspy, "the good news is the soil should be very well fertilized for the next few years. Your world has been burned. The invaders are gone, but they have taken your prosperity, your security, and your innocence with them, leaving behind only scars, ghosts, and a peace that feels exactly like grief. The Japanese are gone, but they have taken the world with them. You are a survivor, standing amidst the ruins of a once proud kingdom. The Imjin War has left scars on your land that will never truly heal. The fields are fallow, littered with the bones of men and horses. The government in Hanyang is bankrupt, its authority shattered. The great palaces and temples, the repositories of centuries of art and learning, are now just heaps of ash and charred timber. The psychological wound is the deepest of all. Your people, who once saw themselves as the proud citizens of a stable, civilized nation, are now a traumatized remnant, forever looking over their shoulder, wondering when the next storm will come. You try to rebuild. A generation is born into this scarred landscape. Life goes on as it must, but just as the first green shoots of recovery begin to appear, a new threat gathers on the northern horizon. They are the Manchu's Jurchen tribesmen, who you have long considered northern barbarians. But they have been unified by a brilliant leader named Norhaitsi, and they are hungry for conquest. They look at your weakened Joseon kingdom now, a tributary of the declining Ming dynasty, and they see an opportunity. The first invasion in 1627 is a sharp, brutal warning. But the second in 1636 is a catastrophe. This time the Manchus are not just raiding, they are here to enforce their dominance. Their horsemen, the famed Manchu banners, are an unstoppable force on the open plains. Your Yoseon army, which has learned little from the Japanese invasion, is swept aside. Your king Injo and his court flee Hanyang, but they don't get far. They are trapped in a mountain fortress south of the capital. The siege is short. Starving and with no hope of rescue, the king surrenders. What happens next becomes the single most humiliating moment in your dynasty's history. You hear the story from a soldier who was there, his voice trembling with a shame so profound it is almost a physical sickness. King Injo, the son of heaven ruler of Joseon, descends from the fortress. He is not dressed in his royal yellow robes, but in the blue garments of a subordinate. He is brought before the Manchu Khan, Hong Taiji, who sits on a high platform. There in the frozen mud of a winter field, your king performs Samjando, the ultimate submission. He performs the kowtow, bowing 9 times each time, prostrating himself fully and touching his forehead to the frozen earth before the barbarian chieftain. With that act of ritual degradation, Joseon's allegiance is switched. You are no longer a vassal of the Ming Chinese, your cultural big brother. You are now a subject of the Manchu Qing, the very people you once despised as uncivilized. The shame of it settles over the nation like a permanent winter fog. Shamed and twice battered, Joseon turns inward. If the outside world is a place of humiliation and destruction, then the outside world will cease to exist. Your kingdom pulls into its shell, becoming a hermit kingdom. Contact with most foreign nations is severed. Your world shrinks to the borders of your own peninsula. And in this sealed container, the political diseases that have always plagued the dynasty fester and grow malignant. The factionalism of the Yangban court becomes the only true political activity. For the next 2 centuries, powerful aristocratic factions named for their philosophical leanings or geographic origins engage in vicious, intractable struggles for power. They do not fight over how to make the country stronger or how to improve the lives of the people. They fight over obscure points of royal protocol, over the proper mourning period for a dead queen, over interpretations of Confucian classics. This is what the great minds of your nation now dedicate themselves to, winning bitter, pointless arguments while the country stagnates around them. In the 19th century, this decay reaches its final putrid stage with the rise of pseudo politics or in-law rule. A few powerful clans who have managed to marry their daughters to the king gain almost total control over the government. They appoint their own relatives to every key position, creating a government of unparalleled corruption and incompetence. You are a commoner living under this system. You see the local magistrate who bought his position from a powerful minister in the capital arrive in your district. You know his only goal is to terrorize the populace and extort enough money through bribes and illegal taxes to recoup his investment and make a handsome profit. You are subjected to a nightmare of taxes, a land tax on fields that have long since washed away in a flood, a cloth tax on households that don't own a loom, and the infamous white skeleton tax, a military service tax levied on men who are already dead. You are being bled dry by a parasitic government. From this soil of absolute despair, a new hope sprouts. It is a religion called Donghak, or Eastern Learning. It is founded by a minor scholar who claims to have received divine revelation. Donghak is a strange and powerful mix of ideas that blends elements of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism with a core revolutionary belief in a Heian, man is heaven. It teaches that every single person, no matter how lowly, has the divine within them, that all people are equal. In a society built on the most rigid of hierarchies, this is an idea more dangerous than any foreign army. You secretly attend a Donghak meeting in a hidden valley. You listen to the preacher, and for the first time in your life, you feel a sense of dignity, a belief that you are more than just a beast of burden for the Yangban. As your kingdom rots from within, the outside world you have tried so hard to ignore comes crashing through the gates. One day you see it yourself from a coastal hill. A black ship. It moves against the wind, belching black smoke, its hull made of a dark alien material. It is a steam-powered warship from the west. Your government's response to these arrivals is hostile defiance. They fire on French and American ships that come to inquire about shipwrecked sailors or murdered missionaries. Your coastal batteries manage to repel these small-scale incursions, and the court in Hanyang congratulates itself on defeating the Western barbarians. It fills you with a sense of false pride and dangerous overconfidence. You joke with a friend, "First we fought the Japanese with their strange guns. Then we bowed to the Manchus with their horses. Now we have Frenchmen and Americans and smoke-belching ships. I'm starting to miss the good old days when our only problem was our own king locking his son in a box. The real threat, however, is the one you have known for centuries. Japan, after being forced open by American gunboats, has transformed itself. It has modernized its military and its industry at a terrifying speed. They have learned the lessons of the West, and now they are eager to build an empire of their own, using the same tactics of gunboat diplomacy. In 1876, they use a minor naval skirmish as a pretext to send their own fleet of black ships to Korea. They force your hopelessly outmatched government to sign the Treaty of Gangwa. It is an unequal treaty, prying open your ports to Japanese trade and giving Japanese citizens extraterritorial rights. You start to see Japanese merchants and officials in your towns. They walk with an air of arrogant superiority that chills you to the bone. It feels like 1592 all over again. The slow collapse is accelerating. Future scholars will debate this time. Was your kingdom's death inevitable a suicide caused by centuries of internal rot? Or was it a murder? A helpless nation falling victim to the brutal new age of imperialism? You don't know the answer. It feels like both. The last decades are a chaotic death rattle. Your king tries to enact desperate last-minute reforms, but it is too little too late. There are coups and counter-coups, some conservative, some pro-Japanese, some pro-Chinese. In 1894, the followers of Donghak, pushed beyond endurance by government corruption, rise up in the largest peasant revolution in your history. They sweep across the southern provinces demanding reform. The terrified Korean court makes a fatal mistake. They ask China for troops to help suppress the rebellion. Japan, citing the need to protect its own interests, sends in its own far superior army. The Donghak rebellion is brutally crushed, and now two foreign armies are on your soil, ready to fight each other for control of your dying nation. The resulting Sino-Japanese War is fought on your land, and Japan wins a stunning victory. Your kingdom is now little more than a Japanese protectorate. The final humiliation comes when Japanese agents, feeling that Queen Min is too clever and defiant, infiltrate the Gyeongbuk Palace and assassinate her, brutally murdering the mother of your nation in her own bed. Your king is so terrified that he has to flee his own palace and take refuge in the Russian diplomatic legation for over a year. Your state is a farce. It cannot even protect its own sovereign. An old disgraced Yungbon scholar, his robes frayed, sits in a tavern weeping into his rice wine. 500 years, he moans. 500 years we debated the proper rites for honoring our ancestors. A former peasant, his face etched with a lifetime of hardship, overhears him and replies, "And the Japanese just showed up and took the whole house." At least the debate is settled. Finally, in 1910, the end comes. It is not a final, glorious battle. There are no heroes making a last stand. It is the quiet, bureaucratic scratch of a pen on paper. The Japan-Korea Annexation Treaty is signed. The Joseon dynasty, after 518 years of splendor, paranoia, and decay, is officially extinguished. You are no longer a subject of the Joseon king. You are a colonial subject of the Empire of Japan. The long, terrible, and sometimes beautiful story of your ancient dynasties has come to an end, and so the long, twisting story comes to a close. The echoes of the past begin to fade, the whispers from the court of vipers, the clang of a samurai's sword, the terrified prayer before the Mongol horde, and the quiet, scratching sound of the pen that signed a kingdom away. Let them all dissolve now into the soft, quiet darkness that surrounds you. The weight of those thousands of years of struggle, of all those dynasties rising and falling, like the tide, is no longer yours to carry. It can all drift away, becoming as distant and as harmless as a half-remembered dream. You are not in that world of ruin and lost glory. You are here now, safe in your room. The sounds you hear are not the marching of foreign armies, but only the gentle hum of a fan or the quiet settling of your own home in the peaceful stillness of the night. There is no enemy at the gate. There is no incompetent king to flee, no desperate battle to be fought. All of the turmoil is over. All of the terrible truths have been told. There is nothing left to endure, nothing left to fight. There is only the deep, welcoming quiet of the night, the softness of your pillow, and the gentle promise of rest. Let the last images fade from your mind and allow yourself to drift into a deep and untroubled sleep. Sleep now.